A single, thoughtful host in an elegant, warm setting, perhaps a library or a sophisticated living room. The tone is conversational, confidential, and insightful, with archival photos and video clips of Helen Mirren and loose women interspersed. We all think we know Helen Mirren, don't we? The poise, the eloquence, that sharp, intelligent glint in her eye that suggests she's seen it all. But there is one story that defies this entire narrative. A story that was barely whispered in the press, but one that echoes with a profound lesson for every single one of us. The day Dame Helen Mirren was asked to leave the set of Loose Women. Now, I can see the disbelief on your face. It seems unimaginable, but stay with me, because what transpired was not a petty squabble. It was not a celebrity tantrum. It was, I believe, a deliberate and powerful collision of two worlds. And the aftermath reveals a secret about personal power and integrity that we can all learn from, especially when life tries to corner us. The two queens, a clash of two diamond-hard realms. To understand this unthinkable event, we must first appreciate that we're dealing with two monarchs, each the absolute ruler of her own domain. First, Dame Helen Mirren. Her realm is one of preparation, of craft, of measured words, and profound silence. Think of her as Queen Elizabeth, a single raised eyebrow speaking volumes. Think of her as the meticulous detective in Prime Suspect, where every piece of evidence is weighed, every word is testimony. Her power is built on control, on a lifetime of wielding language, not as a cudgel, but as a scalpel. She operates in a world where discipline is dignity. And then we have the realm of Loose Women. And make no mistake, its queen on that day was Denise Welch. Her kingdom is not one of scripts and rehearsals. It is a live, pulsing arena of spontaneity. Its currency is raw emotion. Its engine is unfiltered opinion. Interruption is not rudeness here. It is a tool of engagement. Provocation is not an accident. It is the very point. Denise is a master of this environment. Brilliant, fearless, and utterly uncompromising in her pursuit of the dramatic moment. So when Helen, the sovereign of control, walked onto that set, she was not simply a guest on a chat show. She was a head of state on a diplomatic mission into a neighboring kingdom with entirely different laws of physics. She came with her carefully prepared thoughts, her elegant anecdotes. But the arena does not reward preparation. It rewards reaction. The air in the studio was already charged, and as the conversation turned, as it always does, to a hot-button issue, perhaps politics, perhaps a divisive social topic, the gentle banter began to curdle. The questions from Denise became less like inquiries and more like challenges. The interjections became personal. The scalpel of Helen's intellect was meeting the sledgehammer of daytime drama. And this is where our story turns. This is the precise moment the diplomatic mission failed. Helen Mirren, the consummate professional, did the one thing she has been trained never to do. She broke character. But not in the way you might think. She didn't shout, she didn't sneer. What she did was far more powerful and far more dangerous in that arena. She committed the one unforgivable sin. But what was it? What single quiet act could possibly be so transgressive that it would lead to her being removed from the set? The answer is not what the gossip columns would have you believe. It's far more profound. We'll uncover that shocking truth next. Welcome back. We were just asking, what was the unforgivable sin? So, what was the transgression? What did Helen Mirren do that was so heinous? She refused to play. In an environment that feeds on reaction, she offered none. When Denise Welch lobbed up provocative personal comment across the panel, the camera swung to Helen, hungry for the fireworks. They expected a retort, a defense, a flicker of anger. That was the fuel the machine needed. But Helen Mirren did none of that. She simply looked at Denise, not with anger, not with contempt, but with a calm, impenetrable silence. It was the silence of the Royal Shakespeare Company. It was the silence of a queen who knows her position is unassailable. It was, in the context of that noisy, reactive arena, an act of supreme defiance. By withholding her reaction, she pulled the plug on the entire engine of the show. She denied them their moment. In that silence, she wasn't just disagreeing with Denise, she was invalidating the very rules of the game. Her silence was a judgment, a powerful, deafening judgment that said, "I will not dignify this with a response." And in that moment, the balance of power in the studio completely flipped. The person who was supposed to be the guest, the subject of the interview, became the one in control. Her silence was a fortress that their noise could not penetrate. This, of course, is intolerable for a live broadcast. A heated argument is great television. A dignified, silent stalemate is a disaster. The producers, watching from the gallery, would have been in a panic. The segment was dying on its feet. Someone had to break the silence, and it wasn't going to be Helen. And so, the unthinkable directive was given. A producer came onto the floor, there were hushed, urgent words with the host, and the message was delivered to Helen. For the good of the show, for the flow of the program, she was being asked to step away. She was, for all intents and purposes, being kicked off her own interview. But here is the greatest surprise of all. This was not a defeat for Helen Mirren. In fact, what happened next in the quiet of that backstage area was one of the most powerful moments of her career. What she did when the cameras were off reveals the true secret to handling life's most humiliating moments with unshakable class. Cliffhanger. So, what happens after the ultimate public slight? The aftermath. The quiet art of sovereignty. Can you imagine the scene backstage? The hushed tension, the awkward apologies from junior staff, the fury that would be coursing through most people's veins, the temptation to slam a door, to issue a threat, to call a publicist and declare war in the press. This is where the legend of Helen Mirren was truly forged. Not on the Oscar stage, but in a dingy back corridor of a television studio. She did none of those things. She understood a profound truth that comes with a life well lived. The reaction is the prison. If she had erupted in anger, she would have given them the drama they craved, just delivered off stage. She would have become a pawn in their narrative once again. Instead, she demonstrated the quiet art of sovereignty. She understood that her dignity was not theirs to give, and therefore it was not theirs to take away. It was her own creation, her own possession. She gathered her things, she likely thanked the runner for their help, and she left the building not as a banished guest, but as a head of state departing a foreign land that had failed to understand her customs. There was no scandalous story in the papers the next day from her camp, no leaked complaints. She simply moved on. She got on with being Helen Mirren. By refusing to engage in the aftermath, she achieved a total victory. She owned the narrative, not by controlling the story, but by being utterly indifferent to its petty drama. Which leads us to the final and most important question. What is the ultimate lesson from this whole affair? Your inner sovereignty, the unassailable fortress within. The story of Helen Mirren on Loose Women is not about television. It is a masterclass in a specific kind of power that is available to every single one of us right now, regardless of our age or station in life. It's the power of inner sovereignty. Each of us, through 6 decades or more of life, has built a kingdom. We've raised families, navigated careers, endured losses, and celebrated triumphs. We have our own constitution, our own hard-won laws of dignity and self-respect. But how often do we let the loose women of our own lives, the demanding relative, the difficult neighbor, the officious bureaucrat, or the simply rude person in the supermarket, invade that kingdom and demand we play by their chaotic rules? How often do we feel compelled to react, to argue, to justify, to engage in a battle that depletes our spirit? Helen Mirren's stand is our permission slip. It shows us that our greatest power is not always in winning the argument, but in refusing to have it on their terms. Your peace of mind is your throne room, and you have every right to protect it. The next time you feel yourself being baited, being pulled into a drama that you never asked for, remember that silent, powerful look. You have the right to withhold your reaction. You have the right to be calm in the face of chaos. You have the right to simply disengage, to protect your inner sovereign.